Hello, my name is, as always, Aneesh de Vos, and I am actually sat in my dining room today. Little bit of a different background. David is sat in his usual office space, still with the fabulous glasses. And the reason that I'm talking about backgrounds is because today we have with us the most fabulous Robert Hines, who, Robert, you just look like you're at the beach.
Well, I just thought I'd bring the nature with me.
Absolutely.
I know, I'm just kind of like, in this COVID situation, you've got to have a bit of time out.
Absolutely. Even if it's computer generated, how fabulous. And Robert very nicely has led us in to what we would like to talk about today. So in our last session, David and I ended it with this question: becoming therapists, is it your nature or is it nurture, or indeed lack of, that leads you into the helping professions? And I'm sure a lot of people in the helping professions would agree, and indeed it's a topic that's talked about a lot, that we come to these professions because of our own backgrounds. Invariably, we've got something going on in our background, and that brings us forward to want to support others. I would say maybe in that our needs weren't met, and so we want to make that difference and pull it forward. So I'm going to hand it over to the guys and shall we start with you, Robert? Because I know you were kind of chomping at the bit earlier, weren't you? I'm going to ask you simply, nature, nurture, what is it? Why do you become a therapist?
I became a therapist because personal experience. So personal experience, first-hand and second-hand. So there's my own background. Growing up in I had a very difficult time. Didn't understand much about the psychological processes that were going off, and so that was one of the reasons. The other reason was a partner of mine who struggled with their own mental health, and me feeling helpless to help him out. I've kind of felt, I'm sure there is something that I could do, just kind of felt natural to me, but I just didn't know what. Sort it out a little bit further, and that's how I became a therapist, and I wanted to help others. So I kind of feel that it's nature, nurture, and for me, a lot more nature. Yeah, a lot more nature. It's a lot of my personal experience that I've drawn from, and that, in essence, has made me become who I am today. For me to understand who I am from the person-centered perspective helps me to be able to understand other people and life in general. And I do, if I was to quantify it, I would say there's probably about 75% nature, 25% nurture, and kind of to get the broader philosophical understanding of how we come to be. So I think it's a relationship between the two. And for me, it's 75-25. It can be different for others. I don't know. I'm curious what others think.
David, down to you. Down to you. What do you think? Nature, nurture?
Nurture, possibly, yeah. Well, more than likely. Having spent 40 years, I guess, wondering what was wrong with me, if you like. Now I look back. At the time, obviously, that was obscure. Having to overachieve, to have some worth, I guess, in life, and wondering why the grass was always greener and what I had was never good enough. I guess it boils down to the fact that I was told incessantly that I would never be good enough, and worse. And so that led to a point in time where I went off the rails, if you like. In my case, it was addiction.
Yeah.
and coming out of that after treatment, I guess I was in a good enough place to realise I could pass on what I'd learned. And I thought it was a lesson too good to waste on myself. And that's what I've been doing for years now. And I guess if I look at it as a point of development, and they're more than development, as a point of growth.
Yeah.
The more I help, the better I feel. And that's not in a selfish, well, I guess there is a selfish element to it. But there's an enormous sense of fulfillment I get from, I guess, helping people out of similar situations.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it, that you talk about that lesson that you want to share with other people. I'm always a little...
One I wouldn't recommend, by the way. Yeah.
Probably not. And so do you think that the experience that you had growing up, and then how you adapted to deal with the pain from that experience, i.e. yours was through addiction, do you think that then makes you more sensitive to somebody else in a similar situation? So do you then become, your specialism, does it then become more to do with addiction? What do you think?
Yeah, I guess it did, and it has been, and it still is to a certain extent. But what it proved to me was we are unhappy for a reason, and that's very tightly connected to trauma.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to get my head around what trauma meant. For example, it doesn't have to be from injury and emotional scars in battle. It can be from any direction, from whatever means. And again, it's about our perception, a personal perception of what trauma is, rather than a scaling of how severe the event was.
Yeah.
And a lot of us walk around having been traumatized without even realizing, I guess.
Definitely. Robert, in when you look back at your life and how you've evolved to come into therapy, can you speak of any personal experience that, David has been very clear in, his pain led him to into addiction. And I always say about addiction, and it's Gabor Mate's, it's not why the addiction, it's why the pain. And I totally believe in that statement. What about you, Robert? How did you evolve then through, you've spoken of your personal experience. What was it that made you think, well, in actual fact, then I'm going to go forward into therapy as a therapist?
I decided to kind of listen to myself and listen.
I love that.
And also listen to what others pointed out as well, saying that they thought like something's wrong with me, and I'm kind of like, no, I'm okay. And I realized that it's like I was walking around in a daze, and I was just living a destructive life, literally. And I just thought it cannot go on. I mean, initially, it started back in my childhood. I remember very little of my childhood. I remember more from age 10 onwards, but it was quite chaotic, very chaotic actually. A lot of violence going off, and a lot of physical abuse as well, emotional abuse as well, psychological, and life just kind of was just like spiraling out, but I was just kind of functioning and getting by. And it was almost like nothing couldn't touch me either. And it's like I was afraid of very little things, and to a great extent. And I didn't think anything wrong of that. And it just got to the breaking point was in 2013 when my girlfriend at the time, the way how she reacted towards me, I just knew that something was seriously wrong with her, and I didn't know how to help, and I didn't know what to do. It actually tears me up actually talking about it. But that drove me to kind of think, I need to do something. I need to help. I then realised that I was actually helping myself, because when I decided to then put myself to go forward, my fears all surfaced, and so just taking up a counselling for beginners course, just to kind of get an insight. But the worst one was going to the university. It felt like I was going back to school all over again, which wasn't a pleasant experience. Made me realise actually I've got a lot of buried trauma of my own that I just kind of washed away, didn't think anything of it. And then, yeah, there were a few times that I nearly gave up and left, but I'm glad I stuck it through. And I just said, I need to work through it. I cannot run away from myself. Yeah.
No, it becomes a battle, isn't it? That sense of wanting to run away from yourself. And in effect, that's what we walk into, don't we, in terms of when we work in a therapeutic setting.
And that saying still comes to my head when I hear myself say that, which is it's a lyric of Bob Marley's when he says, free yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our own minds.
Yeah.
And I think it's so right. I think I've just got to let it go and work through it and just try and see past it. Yeah, but it raised a lot of demons in me that I didn't realise. And similar to like David, like say, walking around traumatised and not knowing it.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
It's kind of really, it's frightening to kind of think actually that walking around in that state.
Yeah. I do apologise.
Not really being aware of it. That's okay.
Morris. This is why you shouldn't record with small animals.
As well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, So in terms of this, and I apologise for the dog, it shows it's live. He's a very nice dog.
Okay.
I think I'm keeping my calm quite well. So in terms of when you are in a therapeutic situation, do we get triggered?
Yes. I do recall time when it was regarding around racism, and I was taking it personally, thinking it was about me, and I had to take that to supervision. It didn't actually come out verbally in the session, but the person was talking about how they spoke to somebody else, another black person, and like how they spoke to him, it was racist. But then I kind of just sat there with the client, but I do remember my internal workings kind of coming up and kind of wanting me to kind of back off and not be there, kind of taking it personally. And I went through supervision, and it was resolved because I feel that the client was just talking about the situation. It wasn't to do with me, but it triggered those old internal racist responses.
Yeah. And David, we spoke last time, didn't we, about supervision and the importance of it, because you know, if we have these experiences in our life, then they can come up, can't they? They can come up, as Robert just explained. And you know, we are both very pro supervision, yeah, and think that people really should have it. So I suppose the reason that I'm coming into this is because you know, when somebody steps into a therapeutic relationship, you know, as the client, I think it's really important, isn't it? You spoke about contracting last time, didn't you? And I think it's really important to make it clear that we're not standalone, are we? That in actual fact, for us to support you as a client, we need support behind us as well, because we also come with our own experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was asked directly by a client, which is very thoughtful of them, what I do for me. I did have to think about it. I think I mentioned that last time.
Yeah.
Made me think, what do I do for me?
Yeah.
Yeah, supervision's a massive part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Huge
definitely. So in this idea, is it nature, is it nurture? I believe that yes, it's a bit of both. It can be, you know, each person has, you know, their quantifiable part of it. If I were thinking about myself, I think it's nature. I think I was born that way, but I also think of nurture because, you know, I have a very curious background. And certainly, I think I evolved to become a therapist because I was doing it from a tiny bean. So I couldn't know when I was a tiny bean. My mum was hurting, and I would be the one that would go to her and say, you know, come on, mummy, pick yourself up, you know, kind of dust yourself down. That was a saying in our house. And I remember very small saying that. And I remember working with one of my siblings, here I am working with, but you know, I was a tiny little therapist going along, so I couldn't have known that. So I think that must have been part of my nature. I don't know if I can quantify either or. I just think it is a bit of a mix. You know, can't imagine myself being a car mechanic, if I'm honest. I don't feel that in myself, even though I love cars, but I don't feel that in myself. So would you say, guys, that it's about a feeling in yourself that is part of your nature?
So a feeling and thought of the two together.
Yeah.
I feel that well, I don't know, because you can get some people that, like, they may not necessarily feel that they can do it, but then a person, so for instance, people always used to say to me that I was a good listener. And I always used to say, oh, no, I don't think I am. Because I just think, well, why? And I just never got why. And I get it's only after time, again, through listening to others, then listening to myself, I think, well, there must be something there. But I didn't necessarily feel I was a good listener. But it just turns out that I am. What?
That's a bonus.
Yeah. So maybe there could have been a feeling there and I didn't pick up on it, or there just wasn't a feeling there, and then the feeling became because I started to listen to the thoughts and started to nurture the thoughts, and then the feelings probably came with it through recognition that actually I am quite a good listener. Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, David? Oh, sorry, Robert.
No, so I'd just like to add one other bit. I also feel that good listening part, it probably, my disbelief in it probably comes from conditions of worth, of, like I say, through being told things like obviously having, well, not obvious, well, obvious to you guys, my hearing is not that great without my hearing aids.
Yeah.
So with me being stigmatized about that, and being picked on, and so I became a shy person, and I just withdrawn and kept away from people. So because I didn't see myself as someone who really interacted a lot, I didn't see myself as someone that listened that well.
Wow.
It turns out that I hoodwinked myself because I was doing all that stuff.
yeah, I'd say that you're an amazing listener, you know, just as your friend. I enjoy our conversations. What about you, David? Do you want to close us out? Maurice has calmed down now.
Oh, good boy, Maurice.
Never work with children or animals.
Close us out. I want to say it's great to see Robert again.
Really
it's
lovely.
great to see you again.
Yes.
It's been a pleasure to be here. And for whoever picks up on this session, I want to say thanks for joining us, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.